My name is Irene Fogel, and I'm a Holocaust survivor. All of my early life I spent in horror, and I want to share the true stories and atrocities of what happened during World War II. Nobody deserves to see what I saw, and nobody deserves to hear what I've heard. Today, I will tell you a story of a really helpless girl in the hands of cruel Nazis, far away from the fairness, hidden deep under the stereotypes and hate of the society. Everything started just too fast. I was born on November 21st in 1923 in Autrocities, a small town in Czechoslovakia with a population approximately 1,000 mainly farming families, including about 10 Jewish families. The town was very little, so all of the neighbors knew each other and communication was easy, although that doesn't mean that everyone was equal. My dad owned a lumber yard when my mom stayed at home to care for me and my other 5 siblings. We were a happy family until we weren't a family anymore, and the harsh environment returned us to a cruel and ruthless reality. In 1939, when I was just 8 years old, I was given a title, Hungarian Jew. Our country has dismembered and turned into Hungary. In other words, it became an Axis-ruled place. Right away, innocent people like me were banned to attend schools, not allowed to own any businesses, and ordered to join the Hungarian forced labor bridges under military command. My dad was heartbroken. His lumber business was confiscated and given to a non-Jew. All of my siblings and I were thrown out of school, so right away we had no choice but to concentrate on hunkering down and trying not to bring attention to ourselves. We were separated from the normal people. We were the bad people, the people who wore the yellow star. We were the people who just simply couldn't use a train to get places. It wasn't an abnormality if one of my brothers came home all beaten up and covered in blood, just because he was a Jew. Our world was very small, without access to any radio and newspapers. I had to rely on my parents' information about the outside world. However, I remembered many things about the course of the war, who was winning and losing, and the repression of Jews elsewhere. My father was conscripted in 1942. Honestly, I have never seen my mother cry so hard before. Time passed. Approximately 6 months, my dad returned, but was forced to see how Jews were treated under horrible circumstances and had no choice but to exist in Hungary. Nevertheless, Hungary didn't give up its Jew population until Nazi Germany invaded Hungary in 1944. The orders were given out, and all of the Jews were collected and deported all of the way to Auschwitz in Poland. There was a very huge rush to take 500,000 Hungarian Jews to Auschwitz, and it was completed just in 6 weeks by using 147 cattle cars. So by the spring in 1944, all of my family found ourselves in the ghetto area of Munkacs, a brick factory that was never intended to house people. After which we were taken by cattle cars to Auschwitz in the Nazi-occupied Poland. As a family, we had no idea where we were taken, and I cannot emphasize enough how utterly scared it is to be at the mercy of your fellow human beings. As a child, I could not understand what we have done to deserve going there. As we were getting closer to the camp, we saw people working so that we thought that it was just a regular working place. It couldn't have been that bad. Little did we know, our whole family would be torn apart. Some would be killed, and some would work harder than they ever could. All of this was a perfectly orchestrated plan of genocide for all of our kind, from little children to the oldest seniors. When we arrived, it was a typical story, and we all got split up. We didn't know that these people were giving a permission to decide what happens to our lives. So we didn't know that by a show of hand, you could just instantly send a person into the line of people that will be killed. Unknown to us that at that time, Nazi soldiers were directed to make pictures of every Hungarian Jew that was welcomed at Auschwitz for the future records. Later, we discovered a picture where 2 of my brothers, Reuven and Gershon, were standing in line waiting for their turn at the gas chamber. When all of us arrived, the gas chambers were running day and night, and so was crematorium. Although the routine might seem pretty self-explanatory, I still can't quite grasp my head around this concept. My stay in the Auschwitz was a different story. I stayed with my sister Serena, and we were sent to be forced laborers in the Birkenau section of Auschwitz. After 8 months of very hard labor, on about 17 January or 18 January 1945, the SS dragged thousands of us out of the camp to walk to Ravensbrück, concentration camp deep into central Germany. I don't really know why. We were in terrible straits with no proper clothes, nothing suitable for marching through the snow. It was as if the cruelty would never end. If anyone sat down off exhaustion, they were shot. Later we were transported yet again, and my Aunt Piri became ill and was killed. One day, during the morning roll call, Serena was separated and other prisoners were separated from others and labeled as the weak ones. Because Serena was my sister, I couldn't leave her alone, so I asked to join her. We heard from other inmates that they would send us back to Ravensbrück, where we would be put in a gas chamber. We were locked in a room while waiting for the transportation, but the soldiers never arrived. As I later found out, the Soviet troops approached and the SS personnel fled, leaving the camp unguarded. Serena, Aunt Rose, and I found a temporary shelter in a nearby town. After that, we made our way to Prague to search for relatives. We found our uncle, who told us that some of other aunts and uncles have survived, but Serena and I were the only survivors from our family. Eaten by grief, we were forced to continue our lives. I entered a Czech school while Serena worked in the factory to support all of us, since Rose couldn't leave her house because of her tuberculosis. With the sponsorship of relatives and financial aid from the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, Rose, Serena, and I immigrated to New York in 1947. Now I live in Northern Virginia. I have a great husband as well as 3 children and 4 grandchildren. And you will never imagine how happy I am today. But my mission is not over. I have to make sure that nothing like this will ever happen to anyone else, because no one has a right to decide on who survives and who dies. Life is just too precious for that.